It was a dazzling night in Dublin, the charity gala drawing the city's elite into one of its most iconic historic venues. The grand hall sparkled with crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and soft classical music playing in the background. It was the kind of event where luxury met good intentions, an evening dedicated to raising funds for underprivileged communities. Among the sea of glamorous attendees stood Cillian Murphy, his presence understated yet magnetic. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, he moved through the crowd with ease, exchanging polite smiles and brief conversations. Unlike others who basked in the limelight, Cillian seemed more interested in observing the world around him. His sharp eyes caught every detail: the subtle shifts in tone during conversations, the hurried footsteps of waiters weaving through the crowd, and the faint tension in the air that most guests didn't notice. The gala was meant to be a celebration of generosity, yet for Cillian, something felt off. The staff, though professional, seemed burdened, their movements marked by nervous glances and hurried whispers. It was a momentary instinct, a faint sense that something beneath the surface wasn't right. Cillian, always attuned to the subtleties others overlooked, let his curiosity guide him. As he continued to mingle, shaking hands and offering polite words, he couldn't shake the feeling that the evening's elegance was masking an unspoken tension. The gala was in full swing, the room buzzing with animated conversations and bursts of laughter. Guests clinked glasses, their voices blending with the soft strains of a live string quartet. But the lively atmosphere was suddenly interrupted by a sharp voice cutting through the air near the kitchen doors. A young server stood frozen, his hands trembling as the event manager berated him in front of the room. The manager's voice was loud, his tone dripping with authority and anger. "You spilled wine on a guest," he barked, pointing an accusatory finger at the boy. The server, barely in his 20s, stammered in response, his voice shaky. "It wasn't me, I swear. I never touched that table," he pleaded, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. For a brief moment, the room quieted as heads turned toward the commotion. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd, but soon the guests returned to their conversations, dismissing the scene as an unfortunate mishap. Cillian, however, couldn't look away. Standing at a distance, he observed the interaction closely. The boy's fear was palpable, his desperation clear. The manager's cold demeanor and sharp gestures only amplified the humiliation. Cillian's eyes scanned the scene, noting the untouched glass of wine on a nearby table, the alleged evidence of the server's mistake. Something about the accusation didn't add up, and Cillian felt a familiar pull to uncover the truth. Cillian's instincts told him to wait, to observe before acting. He stood quietly, blending into the crowd, his sharp gaze following the interaction between the manager and the young server. The boy flinched with every harsh word, his hands still trembling as he tried to plead his innocence. Around them, the other staff members averted their eyes, pretending not to notice the scene unfolding before them. Cillian moved closer, pretending to engage in small talk with nearby guests, his focus entirely on the dynamics at play. He noticed the untouched glass of wine on the table that supposedly started the incident. Its pristine state contradicted the manager's claims, raising more questions in Cillian's mind. As the young server was dismissed and retreated to the kitchen, his head hanging low, Cillian's attention shifted to the manager. The man's smug demeanor and casual indifference to the humiliation he had just inflicted were striking. Cillian watched as the manager exchanged a laugh with another guest, the arrogance in his body language confirming what Cillian suspected. This wasn't an isolated incident. He knew that stepping in prematurely could backfire. Instead, he chose to gather more information, trusting his keen intuition to guide him. He wasn't just witnessing a mistake, he was seeing a pattern of behavior that needed to be addressed. Determined to uncover the truth, Cillian began quietly piecing together the story. He moved among the staff, engaging them in casual conversation, his warm demeanor putting them at ease. A young waitress hesitated before speaking, her eyes darting nervously toward the manager. When Cillian assured her that her words would remain confidential, she finally opened up. "He always does this," she whispered, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Anytime something goes wrong, he blames one of us. He never takes responsibility, and if we try to speak up, he makes our lives miserable." Her words confirmed Cillian's suspicions. Moments later, Cillian overheard the manager speaking to a guest near the bar. "These kids never last long," the manager said with a chuckle, his voice dripping with condescension. "Too soft for this kind of work." Cillian's jaw tightened at the remark, his resolve hardening. He didn't just see this as an opportunity to defend the young server. He saw a chance to expose a toxic culture that had gone unchecked for far too long. Cillian began formulating a plan, determined to bring the truth to light in a way that would leave no room for denial. Armed with the truth, Cillian decided it was time to act. As the gala reached its peak and the room buzzed with applause for a keynote speaker, Cillian calmly walked to the center of the room. The applause died down as his presence commanded attention. "I'd like to say a few words," he began, his voice steady but piercing. Cillian recounted what he had witnessed that night, not just the false accusation, but the pattern of mistreatment he'd uncovered. Without naming names, he highlighted how no event, no matter how prestigious, should succeed at the cost of its workers' dignity. His words struck a nerve and the room fell silent. Even the manager, who stood frozen near the edge of the room, knew the charade was over. By the end of the night, the truth was undeniable. Several staff members, emboldened by Cillian's speech, came forward to share their own experiences. The event organizers, embarrassed by the revelations, promptly dismissed the manager and issued an apology to the staff. The young server, who had been at the center of it all, approached Cillian with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. Cillian smiled, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just remember to stand up for yourself when it matters most." The room, once filled with superficial chatter, now buzzed with meaningful conversations about fairness and respect. The impact of Cillian's actions didn't end with the gala. News of his quiet but firm stand spread beyond the event, sparking discussions about how workers in high-pressure environments are treated. Social media lit up with praise for the actor who used his platform not for attention, but to advocate for others. A week later, the young server shared a heartfelt post online, thanking Cillian and promising to pay the kindness forward. The post went viral, inspiring countless others to speak up against injustice in their own lives. Cillian, as always, stayed out of the spotlight, letting the ripple effect of his actions speak for itself. Days later, as Cillian sat in a small cafe, sipping a cup of tea, he reflected on the night at the gala. He hadn't planned to make a statement or be the center of attention. It wasn't his style. But he knew that standing up for others, especially when no one else would, was always worth it. Watching the bustling street outside, he smiled to himself. He wasn't just an actor or a celebrity. He was someone who could make a difference, even in the smallest of ways. And that, he realized, was the role he was most proud to play. And so, Cillian Murphy proved that even the smallest actions can have a profound impact. His quiet courage and unwavering sense of justice turned a moment of humiliation into a lesson in humanity. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one.